to Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And I'm your host, John, as always. And today, one of my favorite guests, I had to have her back on because she's amazing. She is just, like I said, one of my favorites. I love her to death because she does so much. And we had so much fun the last time. Here, it's KJ from Mad City Ghost Walks. Welcome, KJ.
Thank you for having me back. Happy to be here.
Yes. So, yes. You didn't know we had a crowd in here, did you?
No, you should have warned me. I'm scared. Maybe you have ghosts in your in your space.
I love it. Let's do that. KJ is just not a great host of Mad City Ghost Walks, and we'll get into that a little bit. But she's a paranormal investigator. And also, she's a lecturer. And she did a nice little lecture about Gettysburg, which we'll get into. But let's start out with Mad City Ghost Walks. So in our last episode, kind of talked about, that was a little while ago. Well, the spooky season is almost upon us. And what would be a great treat for someone, your spooky friend, or if you're just looking to be like, I didn't know Madison was haunted. There's places in Madison that are haunted. AJ, why don't you just kind of give a brief summary or whatever you want to talk about with Mad City Ghost Walks, what you're looking forward to here in the Halloween season?
Yeah. Spooky season to me comes right after Labor Day. Well, if it's not 24/7, it's like first week of September is go time. So Mad City Ghost Walks, I've done a handful of tours so far, but they're really starting to pick up. And yes, Madison is capital H haunted. And we're just doing a fraction of the city, hopefully more places in the future. But we do walking tours. They're 2-hour walking tours of downtown Madison throughout the university. And then we also do cemetery tours of Forest Hill Cemetery, which is the largest and one of the oldest cemeteries in Madison, with a lot of stories and a lot of ghosts as well.
I love it. And I will hopefully can get on a tour because KJ has been nice enough to, tell me, hey, Johnny, gonna get on a tour. Even though I've lived in Wisconsin, around the Madison area all my life, I'm like, still like, oh yeah, that's haunted and that's haunted. I totally forgot that. We talked about last time, but can you just tell my spooky friends again, what is your favorite haunted place in Madison or just surrounding area?
Oh gosh, favorite spooky place in Madison. Well, there are a few. Some of them aren't even open anymore, but I am thinking I love Forest Hill Cemetery. That has become kind of my most favorite spooky, but beautifully spooky. Not like, it's not a creepy, haunted, abandoned cemetery. It's a garden cemetery. It's a beautiful cemetery, but there are trees there that are hundreds of years old. And it's like you're frozen in time when you go through Forest Hill. And there's so many paths and it's so quiet and it's so peaceful. But there is just this undercurrent of spookiness there because there's so many untold stories that I've actually done a lot of research into some of those unmarked graves. So you can't find their grave, but their story still remains. So I've had fun finding stories to tell. And something always happens on one of my tours. I don't want to give it away, but I feel like with my cemetery tours, the spirits are with us. Let me just put it that way.
That I love. Just so we can tease the audience a little bit, can you just give one quick example just for me?
Sure. Well, there's a ghost. So the cemetery tours aren't just this person's buried here and this person's buried here. Like we talk a lot about symbolism in cemeteries, the history of cemeteries. What's the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard? There actually is a difference. So you're going to be educated as well as maybe a little spooky and a little bit, I don't want you to be scared on my tour, certainly, but there was a story at Forest Hill where one of the groundskeepers was just doing his rounds and he happened to just notice a woman that was hunched over one of the graves, and she was dressed in all black, and something just seemed off. It wasn't period appropriate clothing. It was older, like a morning gown. And he thought, well, that was weird. It was in the middle of like a Sunday afternoon. And he just thought, okay, I'll leave her to do her thing. And when he came back
Sure.
a little bit later in the afternoon, still just doing his rounds, he had his dog with him in the truck. They're just doing their groundskeeping kind of roles. And someone in that same area had pulled over and flagged him down. He said, "Excuse me, I'm looking for my great grandfather's or my great grandmother's gravestone. She was buried here. I don't remember where it is." And he just kind of said, "What if is it over there?" And he pointed to where this woman was. And sure enough, that was that person's great grandmother's grave. He had no way of knowing that. And he said, I got to tell you, I saw a woman by that grave earlier dressed in all black clothing. And he described her. And the guy's like, that was my great grandmother. And he had a picture and everything. And apparently there was some family ritual where every year on the anniversary of her death, they would go visit her grave. And he was running late. And the groundskeeper, so the grandson didn't see the ghost. The groundskeeper saw the ghost. The dog saw the ghost. But he said, yeah, I guess we were a little too late, but that was my grandmother. And I hear stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, that is so cool.
Right.
And that happens. That happens in a lot of cemeteries. That's kind of a common story I've heard among people, is that they see the ghost of the person at that grave. Isn't that wild?
Awesome. That is totally what I love stories like that, because that is so indicative of, there's a lot of restless spirits in graveyards and cemeteries, which makes so much great folklore and so much fun, but also can be a little bit creepy, which is always fun too. Sometimes the hair stands on the back of your neck. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Absolutely. And that's what happened to that groundskeeper. And I look at the bigger picture and I'm thinking, why was he meant to see that ghost, but not the family member? Did it change him going forward? Was he a skeptic until he saw that? And sometimes I feel that some of the most skeptical people, or the most, I don't believe in that, are the ones that end up having a profound experience that just shakes them to their core.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because being in the paranormal, we're both in the paranormal, but it seems like ghosts are like, yeah, that dude, he already know. Let's get that guy, who
Right.
doesn't care about. Like, I don't believe in any of this. It's total
We already had
whatever
our lives
BS.
shaken up and we believe in it. So maybe that person will get something out of that. So I thought that was an interesting story. And a lot of it's just research, but it's also talking to the people that work at these cemeteries. They have the stories.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's really great. And, I've been on a number of tours, and like I said, look forward to being on your tour. What else can people expect, being on your tour? Anything else you'd like to share that, people who listen to this to be like, "Oh, that sounds great." That's a little different from other tours I've been on.
Yeah, I like to say it's a safe place to talk about weird stuff. Some people are a little nervous to be on a tour. I'm going here because my
Sure.
wife made me go on the ghost tour, It's
Yeah.
interactive. I am not one, and I admire, there's so many different types of tour guides out there too some are historians. Some of them have some more history or architecture into their stories, but I'm a storyteller and I'm a paranormal investigator. Like, I'm not just memorizing a script. I'm researching this. I'm writing this. I'm investigating this, and I'm excited about it. I'm not being the kind of broody storyteller. I am a creepy person and I've been on tours like that, and that's awesome. That's not my style.
Yeah, sure.
I have fun with the
Yeah.
paranormal. I think the paranormal is fun and absurd and weird, and things that have happened to me in my life don't make sense. It's playful, it's intelligent, and so I try to bring that into my tours. So, yeah, some of the details are scary, but ultimately I want you to leave my tour with more questions than answers. I want you to think about your relationship with the paranormal, your relationship with the cemetery. And the tour isn't over just because it's been 2 hours and it's time to go home. I want you to be thinking about it the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I love that. That's perfect, because that's a great tour, right? That you go into, someone who loves what they're talking about, is passionate about what they're talking about. And then also you kind of question, like, before I was going in, and then after being KJ and being on the tour and seeing her love and passion and the history she talks about, I'm going to look at it a little differently than maybe I did in the past. And that's what we want to do here, on this podcast, as well as other podcasts, as well as you want to do, is take away some of the mystique, right? You get either people are total skeptics, like that's impossible, that can't happen, or people are so into it, they just want to know more. And I think that's me and you, and most of them I know hanging out. So that to me is
Yeah.
interesting at the cemetery.
I want skeptics to come on my tour. You can come. It's open for everybody. Everyone can have a good time, even if you don't believe it. Fine, it's great storytelling for 2 hours. I hope that's what I'm giving, and it seems to be going well. And we've got tours coming up. I've got about 10 or 12 people on a tour in a couple weeks, so it keeps growing, and it's excited that so many other people are also excited about the history of Madison. Whether you're from Madison or you're just visiting for the weekend, everyone can enjoy this tour.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things too, I've been on numerous tours, and most of them have been pretty well done, and I enjoy it. And I've interviewed different people from like the Door County, from Savannah, uh, from also Texas, so some different people on different tours, and everybody is a little different, but again, I think that kind of gives you the options to be like, okay, this is the kind of tour I like, being interactive, talking about weird stuff. And I think one of the main things too that people don't understand, which I think is when you look at the history of cemeteries, it used to be like a park. And that just blows me away. So like in the 1800s, you would go and have a picnic, at a park. And I think that's really interesting.
Man didn't want me spilling all the secrets about my tour, apparently. Anyway, where were we? You're
Yeah.
talking about Door County.
Yeah. I was talking about with Door County, and they have a different type of tour. Also, Savannah, talk to Savannah, Georgia, talk to tours about that, and they're different too. And I love that you're an interactive. You talk about stuff. I think that's great, and I think that what makes a great tour.
Yeah, and we're looking at, I like that you said Door County. I'm trying to plan a trip there in the spring. I think they do trolley tours and bar crawls and all these things. So those are options that Mad City Ghost Walks is
Yeah,
hopefully expanding in the future. So I've never been to Savannah. I really want to be there. I want to go on a ghost tour there too. So
oh,
it's neat to see not only the history, but the mystery, and then just the personality that tour guides bring, because you can, it's a challenge. You're trying to keep people occupied and interested and curious for 2 hours. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So it's
yeah,
not really even work. It's just, let's go talk. Let's have a good time. Ask me
yeah.
questions. I'm an open book. I love talking weird. So come on down.
I love that. I absolutely love that because I think that's something that gets lost in certain tours. People are just doing their job, and I get that. But I was saying with cemeteries, they used to be treated like a park. You know what I mean? Like you would get your family together, and you get a picnic basket, and you would sit in front of your grandpas or uncles or whatever headstone, and just have a conversation. So I thought that was really interesting that you don't see people doing that
No,
much anymore,
why
and I can
not?
see
Can we
why,
bring that
but
back?
it's still I think why not, right? Right. I just, I understand why people kinda look at it like it might be weird, but why is it weird? Because there's nothing wrong with going out and, talking to your mom, your dad, your uncle, brother, whatever, and just having that communication, and maybe just sitting down and having a talk.
I don't
What's
get
so
it
weird
either.
about that? I
No,
don't
and
find it weird.
the cool thing is
Yeah.
about Forest Hill Cemetery is that there's still actually, they're called carriage steps that are like old. They almost look, you think they're gravestones, but they're not. They're steps that lead up to a family's burial plot. So you'll see carriage steps because you'd pull your carriage up with your horse and you'd get out for your Sunday picnic. And those still remain from 150 years ago. They're still there at Forest Hill. So that you are walking the same steps that these people have done for generations and telling those stories. Yeah,
I
it's
love
a
it.
really cool place.
I love I love it. The only cemetery that I would love to go to, and I don't know if you've heard about this one, but we did a episode on, is the Bachelor's Grove
Been
Cemetery
there.
in
Yep.
Illinois. That's Oh, okay. So tell me a little bit about your
Well, I had
experience
gone
there.
there it was a couple of years ago. I was going through Chicago area en route to a paranormal conference, I think, and I was like, "Well, I gotta go to Bachelor's Grove," and it's a little tricky to find because it's, like, right on a highway, so you have to kinda
Yeah.
park and cross the street, and it's spooky. It's one of the I don't know the history of it right now off the top of my head, but it is an older cemetery that experiences light orbs and voices and wispy shadow figures, and there's a lot of children buried there and a lot of, like, artifacts and toys and pictures and teddy bears. So there's just this kind of eeriness to it because it's a lot of kids, unfortunately, because kids died a lot back in the 1800s because we didn't have vaccines and, that's a whole other thing,
Absolutely.
but it's you go back in time and it's kind of overgrown, it's a little unruly, there's, like, weird trees hanging, so there's definitely a presence back there for sure.
Absolutely, and it has one of the most famous pictures, I put it in my social media, of a woman sitting near a gravestone, and it's a full body apparition, and a lot of people think it was the mother, and she lost her baby, and if you see this picture, like, "Oh, that's Photoshop or whatever." No, this picture was taken, I think, what, in the '30s or something like that?
I
It was a
remember
long
that.
time ago. I don't know when, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
It blows you
it's not
away.
even like a scary
Just
picture.
like
It's someone just taking a picture of this plot, and then when they developed it, you see just a woman sitting there, and she just looks like she's sitting there, and that wasn't really there. I forgot about that picture. That's the thing. Like, sometimes you get
yeah,
paranormal evidence when you're not even looking for it. You're just being there in the moment and existing, and something shows itself to you.
yeah, absolutely. So, I can tell you just really 2 quick stories about my experience at graveyards. And maybe I'll have this one at Forest Hills. So, in Savannah, the graveyards there are, like, in the middle of the city. It's weird, like, it's just bizarre, like, you go to, like, a bar, and then you walk a little bit, and here's this graveyard, like, they just plopped it right in the middle of Savannah, and that graveyard was one of the most famous ones. There's been a number of experiences in there, good and bad. Uh, when if you know your history, Savannah, I found out from people I interviewed, Savannah was not like a typical battle town, eh, but Sherman on his march to the sea burned Savannah, a lot of it to the ground, when he was going there. And one of the things is the Civil War soldier stood in this graveyard and totally desecrated it. So they went into mausoleums and threw the bodies out and built fires in there because it was a little cold. Newly fresh dug graves, they threw the bodies out of the graves and slept in the graves because, again, warmer. They totally desecrated this graveyard. So when I went on the tour, uh, past certain time, they do not let you go into it because people have gone into it, have been pushed, scratched, bruises. Mostly women have been hair pulled, pushed, attacked, you name it. So they will not let you go into this grave on the tour after a certain amount of time. You can walk up to the fence and do that and look inside, basically. It has huge chains on the doors to get in. So when I was walking past KJ, I took my phone out and I was taking pictures, and my phone didn't work at all. Did not work at all. It just would, I tried to snap, but nothing's happening. It's my phone, right? It's a little okay. I get back to my hotel room and I just take some pictures. Work perfect. I went back the next morning because I was on a business trip and the business I was going to was near there, and I tried it again. Same thing, KJ. Would not take any picture. Phone wouldn't work. And that's actually true. A lot of people have experienced that, at least what I've been told, when they've tried to take pictures, either something comes up or their phone, their camera, if they have the camera still, does not work. Has that ever happened on one of your tours where someone has gotten out their phone and been like, "Hey, I'm trying to take a picture. Why isn't this
Not
working?"
yet. I'm open to that. I was trying to think on my
Ha
tours. No,
Okay.
that hasn't happened yet. If they've caught anything, because I encourage people, I'm like, please take pictures, please take video clips. And if you catch something, let me know.
Yeah,
And we'll
yeah,
look at
yeah,
it together
yeah.
and I can teach you debunking skills. That's a piece of dust. That's a moth. That's not a ghost. So that's fantastic. I've heard that though. I've had my phone, not on my tours, but in some places that I've investigated, like the battery will drain. And it's the timing is interesting because it's right around the same time that we may have captured some evidence in a different room that my phone just went bloop, down to 20%. So you have to wonder, is something pulling energy from that to either
Yeah,
manifest or to prohibit you from going in
yeah.
that cemetery and saying, no, you're not allowed here, Mr. White Guy, or whatever it is, They could be telling you, you could be like, oh,
Hey,
you're
you
not
get
coming
out.
in here. That's kind of spooky, but compelling.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing was years ago, I went on the Door County trolley tour. And when I went on that, I actually had a digital camera with me, full batteries, full everything. On the tour, if you go on it, there is a plot where it is the husband, wife, and their 2 young children all buried together. Well, there were some bad things that happened. This is 1800s, you know. The children died early, then the wife, and then the husband. And some say they were cursed by a witch or there's this big long story for that. So when I tried again with my digital camera, tried to take a picture, would not work, would not work. And when I did get some pictures out, it was like blurred. You know what I mean? Like, you know how some people you take your camera and you just don't hold it steady enough, and then you're like, oh man, I should have held that steadier. That's what happened. Just totally and got back to the hotel, took pictures with it, perfect, no problem. And I asked the guide, and he said, yeah, that happens. We have a lot of people that happens to. So just that's fascinating to me that power, that energy around that gravestone has enough power to affect an electronic device, but drain a battery, not have it work, cause blurs on your camera. I mean, that just blows me away how
Yeah, and there's
interesting
there's
that is.
something to that because it happens. It's too not coincidental. Like it's too on point sometimes where it's like, no, don't take my picture, or hey, I'm trying to get your attention. Or if you don't take things from people's graves, I'm just hypothetically, if there's because people leave offerings on graves like
Yeah.
shells or coins, don't move them because then your car might not start or your radio
Good.
goes in and out or some weird
Yes.
mechanical failure happens in your car. Not saying that I have ever done anything
Yeah.
like that, but put it back, leave it alone. It's an offering. That's not yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So word to the wise.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about this before, KJ. Have you ever had a feeling or a spirit follow you home?
Well, we just had one that turned off our podcast. No, maybe, I don't know. My lights flicker sometimes. I don't know. Maybe it's my cat who passed on this summer. I think I've had a couple. No, that's fine. She can haunt me all she wants. There were a couple times that I may have brought some little thing home from, like an abandoned farmhouse. And it wasn't anything valuable. It was like a cassette tape. It was like just some little tchotchke thing. And I stopped doing that. My friend, I will, because I don't know if he wants to be known that he witnessed this, but we came over and we were watching TV after exploring an abandoned place, and the volume on my TV went all the way up and then all the way down, and neither of us touched the TV or on the remote or anything. And he's like, "Did you do that?" I'm like, "No," and it just so happened it was right after I took this little thing from a house. I thought, "Is that a coincidence? Is that someone saying put me back?" So I stopped doing that. That was years ago. So I'm like, nope, everything can just stay where it's at. That's great. If I'm not allowed to take pictures, I will respect that. If the pictures don't turn out, sometimes when I'm editing a photo of a gravestone or a haunted place, like the edits, like it crashes, like the system crashes or the phone reboots. Like there's been times, and it's never if I'm editing a picture of like anything else. It's always when I've been at a spooky place that's haunted. Even the little
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know how to explain how a phone works, but just stuff happens and I don't know why. Maybe it's me.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing that I was talking about, to some of my guests, which I found fascinating. One of my guests was talking about they were on an investigation, and basically what they were doing is similar to you, but they're investigating a house, so they just have regular people. You can go on this investigation and you can help with the equipment and ask questions and stuff. But this one woman felt like super nauseous and super anxiety, and she had to walk out of the house. And the head paranormal investigator, which again, this is just so fascinating to me, said to her, "It's none of my business, but are you currently on any medication for anxiety or depression, or are you having maybe some issues with depression?" And she's like, "Yes, I am." And he said that ghost, it was a male unruly ghost, kind of a dick ghost, sought her out and attacked her because he could, because of her depression. And again, I just find that it just blows my mind that something would do that. A ghost. Has that ever happened? Maybe in an investigation to you or to someone else that someone's kind of singled somebody out?
That's a good question. My gears were turning as you were telling that story because I've heard that before from people. I've known people that had that happen. I felt
Yeah,
really
yeah.
nauseated myself and sad and just kind of like I don't want to be here when I was at Penhurst Asylum in Pennsylvania. And again, I'm trying to be as rational and skeptical as I can. I'm not saying skeptical doesn't believe I don't believe in it. It just means I need more information. That's what skepticism is I just need more information.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt sick. I felt weird. I felt nauseated. I felt like everyone was like looking at me. And I've been in abandoned asylums before and have had different emotions and different experiences. So I don't know if there's just asbestos everywhere and I was actually having a visceral reaction to being in a
Yeah,
place like that, or if it's just because of
yeah,
the tragic and sick and suffering history that is associated with Penhurst Asylum is still lingering. And I'm feeling
yeah,
that. I'm sensitive. So
yeah.
I don't know. And I like the feeling of not knowing. I don't want to know. I just want to experience it and learn from it and tell people about it. I think it's good to confront those uncomfortable emotions sometimes and sit with them. And there was a time I was at a bar. Actually, it was the old Baraboo Inn. I think we talked about that on the last podcast. There was, and sometimes I
Yes.
like going into a place and not know the history. Like, don't tell me that there's a ghost that looks like this over here, because then I'll just probably create that in my mind. So just don't tell me anything. And I happen to be in an area in the front of the old Baraboo Inn where I felt like this. I was like, gosh, I feel this oppressive, like feeling on my throat. I was like, whoa. And they had told me, they said, yeah, there's a story back from when this was the old rowdy cowboy bar that someone was hanged from that beam that I was standing under going, oh, and someone was hanged there. And so me being one that likes the stone tape residual haunting theory, I didn't interpret that as there's someone trying to get me out. Like, I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted it as I just
Yeah,
walked into like a time warp briefly where I felt what he might have felt. And so I would love to learn more about that woman's story where she had that happen. And I'm not discounting her story. I just sometimes have a different take on things. Like maybe the spirit wasn't trying to affect her. Maybe he was trying to communicate with her. Maybe he was just trying to say, hey, here's what I felt in this moment, in this space. And you're feeling that. And then you just react to your
absolutely.
body's sensation. And that's where the emotion comes from.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think that's really interesting too, because it takes so much energy for a spirit to do that. People don't understand. It's not like me and you talking, you know what I mean? It takes energy for us to do this, right? But when you're dead and it takes more energy, quite a bit of energy to even have physical contact, to have a voice, to have touch, to have anything like that, and for to someone to impose their will, or a spirit to impose their will, I should say, that is powerful stuff. right? I mean, that's just unbelievable stuff. Now, that being said, if you're with KJ and on her tour and there's something going on, make sure you let her know. Obviously, she wants you to be safe and everything like that. But, the main thing is to understand you're gonna have a great time and everything. So, that's awesome. So, let's move on to you were at Gettysburg, is
I
that
was at
correct?
Gettysburg, end of August 23rd, thereabouts.
And
What
what
was
were
I
you
doing? I
doing
was
there?
doing everything there. I was invited there by the Association of Paranormal Study. I had applied to be a speaker at their annual symposium way back earlier in the year. Yeah, yeah, they
Whoa,
do. This is not yeah, it's fancy. It's not just
fancy.
like a Paracon. Nothing against Paracons, where it's fun and there's vendors and you can buy stuff and this is like a symposium. This is like you sit and you go to a conference. It's like every hour there's speakers talking about their research and their theories and their papers and their books that they've written. You look at their website, you look at the list of speakers, and it's people with PhDs and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, and you invited me. I did ghost tours. So I was happy to be a part of such a fantastic group of very intelligent, very committed, passionate polymaths of the paranormal. And so, I'd gone up to Gettysburg, and it was a 2-day conference, 1-day conference. There was a party the night before, and then there was a conference all day. Different speakers at different venues, all downtown Gettysburg. I was like, this is a dream come true.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like it. That's still on my, wish list to get there. So, KJ, what did you talk about? What was your main, lecture, speech that you
Yeah,
kinda focused on?
I presented my theory on the stone tape theory. It's called If Walls Could Talk, and it's the science of residual hauntings to
Mhm.
understand the stone tape theory. And we talked about a little bit about that in the last podcast too, that hauntings, not all hauntings are these conscious entities trying to communicate with you. They're just an imprint, like a psychic bleed through in the environment. And it was really neat to not only give a presentation about that, but in Gettysburg in a haunted building. And the building I spoke in was the old orphanage downtown, which when they told me I was speaking at the orphanage, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That was like, you want to talk about another building that affected
Nice.
me? I had toured that building and I left just in tears. It was the most terrifying building I've ever been in my life. So, of course, I'm going to go speak in that building about ghosts. And when I was in that building, I was like looking around. I'm like, I have to give a very important presentation. Do not affect me. Like, be nice. And nothing weird happened during the presentation that I'm aware of.
Good.
So I got to talk about that in the chapel area. Stories about ghosts
Nice.
In Gettysburg, in the most haunted building in their chapel. So I felt kind of protected at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, obviously. Can you give my spooky friends a brief description? We got into a little bit in our last episode, but can you, talk a little about stone tape theory and why it's so important in the
Yeah, I
paranormal
love some
world?
people love it, some people hate it. But who cares? It's a theory. Nobody knows the answer. This is what we do. We go to these conferences and we talk about theories and we talk about ideas. And stone tape theory is the idea that the environment acts like a primitive tape recorder. Some of us are old enough to remember what a tape recorder is, and I actually have one that I bring with me. Like, this is a tape recorder. And because tape recorders are, in essence, electromagnetic energy that is being manipulated through plastic that's covered in iron oxide powder. Okay, that's a metal that it amplifies circuitry. So why not the iron or the quartz or the limestone or the gold? All of these naturally occurring elements in the environment also amplify circuitry. And they're in our watches and they're in our cell phones. They're in this laptop. Why can't the environment act as a digital recorder? And I explore some of the science that suggests that that's possible, like the powers of our DNA, the powers of water having kind of an electromagnetic memory on a molecular level. Water molecules can actually communicate with one another. And I wrote a paper about this too. So it's a lot of interesting kind of what I call weird science, where you look at the science and you look at the paranormal implication of it. And to me, it really resonates with me. And literally, it resonates with me is that you go to a place like Gettysburg, which is, I call it paranormal Disneyland, because the earth is saturated. The rocks, the walls are still there. The breastworks are still there. The cannons are still there. The trees are still there. The very environment that 50,000 people died in 3 days. 50,000 people, okay? We can't even fathom that. It's the blood, the energy, the terror, the courage, all of those emotions saturate the environment of Gettysburg. And so under certain conditions that we don't understand yet, those memories play back. Those soldiers are still walking on the battlefield. They're not walking and stuck in time. They're, I'm a soul that can't leave. I'm trapped. No, it's just an image that's burned into the environment. That's what stone tape theory says.
Yeah, I love that because it's like how we, as human beings, how we soak up certain emotions over certain things. Like, for example, let's say, you used to go with, I don't know, your mom to a deli downtown, and let's say your mom passes. When you go to that deli, you feel that emotion, right? You feel, oh my God, this is where mom and I went every Sunday afternoon, and mom got a sandwich, and I got a milkshake, and it was, we talked and laughed, and right? There's that experience of seeing that, of just being at that place and everything like that. And then imagine that now that it's blood, guts, pain, misery, just compacted by 50,000 people, right? And their energy just absorbed into the rocks and the trees and the ground. That's a lot, right? That's super interesting to me, how that works. Uh, Let me ask you this question, because I've heard this before that kind of is related to stone tape theory a little bit. Um, that there are certain anniversaries, of battles. There's certain times of the day. There's certain, a full moon, maybe a thunderstorm. What do you think about that? That kind of like activate it, right? That, like, that's the trigger.
I'm really
What
glad
do you
you
think
asked that
about that?
question, because that is something I talk about in my paper and my presentation, is that I think as paranormal investigators, we need to not just look for evidence in our gadgets, but look at the environment in which it's happening. Try to find a pattern of, wow, all these things happened and it's midnight. It's a full moon. It's
Right.
60 degrees or whatever. Take down data on the environment, because that's what's going to help us understand the root cause of some of this phenomenon, maybe or maybe not. And one of the most profound things that happened to me, and forgive me if I already talked to you about it on the podcast, was when I had a spirit box thrown at me. That's not residual. Like, this was a very conscious, I don't say attack. I think it was just, hey, I'm getting your attention. The spirit box said my name, and then it just went off the shelf and right at my feet. And I'm like, okay, do that again. So, some people would run out the door, and I'm like, do that again. And I noticed it was full moon. It was on an equinox too. It was on the first day of summer. So there were all these other environmental qualities happening during this investigation. There was a thunderstorm. So I'm thinking there's got to be something to that. I'm just not smart enough to like do all that kind of research. But if I could inspire someone to go out there and do that, do it. Because the moon affects the tide flow. 70% of the earth is water. 70% of our bodies is water. Perhaps not coincidentally. All of these elements work together. And at dusk and at dawn, so like those kind of liminal times of day, the frequency
Right.
goes up. It fluctuates, and it's most powerful at dawn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, really interesting. Hold on one second. And we're having spooky stuff here. Um, that's really weird. Do you want to come in and out again, KJ? For some reason, it's saying your upload got complete. So That's okay. Okay.
We're back.
All right. Let's get you up to speed here. We'll make sure everything's cool. So yeah, I don't know why he was doing that. It's kind of weird.
My internet, my shitty internet connection, or it's the ghosts in my life getting
You
excited and saying,
probably
"Don't tell
probably a
them the
combination.
secrets."
That's a combination of both. Yeah, I'm just gonna wait till you get a little bit up to speed here, then because I caught what you last said. Then I have another question for you, so we'll go from there. Alrighty. Okay, so stone tape theory has to do a lot with, and correct me if I'm wrong, has a lot to do with objects absorbing certain, whether you want to say emotions or energies, whatever you want to say. But here's the thing: you were kind of talking about earlier, like you kind of grabbed a little tape and you went home, and then the TV, was going a little crazy for you with the volume. But let me ask you this. In the Civil War, there were some common tools like drums, like obviously rifles, swords, things like that. W- Do you think there's any of those that would be more more suspect to absorbing the energy? Because like, would you think someone's rifle? Would you think someone's uniform? Like maybe the drums? Because again, they had drummer boys, young men who would be drumming into battle. So, imagine that you're this young boy, like maybe 10 or 11 years old, and bullets are whizzing by your head, and you're scared. So, I'm just curious. Do you think there's any? I guess my question is: do you think there's anything over, like maybe a drum or a uniform that would absorb more of that energy? That you would get more communication from the spirits per se.
Yeah, I definitely think objects can hold a memory. I mean, there's the phenomenon of place memory, which is very similar. It's kind of in the same spectrum of stone tape theory and residual hauntings. I think, I almost think that some of the objects that I've seen that are supposedly haunted or that I've experienced tend to not be the clothes. It tends to be the bullets, the rifles, the bone saws, the bullets that you had to bite on as they were amputating your leg, the stuff that got the full impact of a person's emotion. Think about it. You're loading your gun because you want to shoot and kill somebody. You're projecting that hatred, that emotion into that bullet. There is a place in Gettysburg, actually there's several, but one of the buildings that I stayed at was called the Farnsworth House Inn in downtown Gettysburg. It is still riddled with bullets. There's cannonballs stuck in the side of it. Their bar, they have an outside patio where you can have a drink. The bar is from a tree that they cut down that was riddled with bullets. And they reuse everything in Gettysburg. They're like, this is from a witness tree. So I'm sitting here having a cocktail on an old tree that's riddled with bullet holes and the bullets are still in there. And I'm thinking, again, when you're thinking about metal and objects that absorb and amplify circuitry, of course they're going to be haunted. They're going to stay there. So it's interesting to me to go to these places and see what their haunted objects are, or see this building is haunted. Well, yeah, it's full of metal and bronze and all of these tools that we use, that we manufactured to harm someone or to... I keep using the bone saw analogy because my boyfriend actually bought a bone saw in Gettysburg,
Ooh.
like an actual Gettysburg bone saw. It's rusty and I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, I'm happy for him. I'm like, you got to let me know if anything happens while you own this object, because I really wish I saw it first. But I think that, short answer, yes, I think that those things can absorb an energy, or can maybe even be used in the reverse to like trigger the response from the paranormal. A lot of people, they might fire a Civil War gun in the battlefield to stir up activity because it's a familiar sound. It's a familiar energy that's out there. And just thinking of the world and all of the objects that we use as just atomic in nature, and nothing's inherently physical, right? It's all just atoms and molecules and energy. why can't it bleed in from one time to another?
Yeah, and, you know, the other thing too, you were talking about the orphanage and everything being sensitive of feeling the energy of those poor children in there. Um, the only and correct me if I'm wrong, but the only documented civilian that was killed during the Civil War, we talking about that, how that might really affect a person who and I can't remember if the place where she was killed is open to the public, but I believe it is. I think you can stay in that particular room. Is that right,
Yes.
or am I totally off?
You cut out a little bit, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying. And yes, the Jenny Wade house is available for tours. You can't spend the night, but it's still open. It's just this little teeny tiny house with a gift shop attached to it. And the bullet that was fired that struck Jenny Wade was fired from the attic of the Farnsworth house where I stayed. And so it, she's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was the only she's baking bread. She's pregnant. She's baking bread for the soldiers, and the bullet just came through and killed her. And so you can take a tour of that place, and they do say that it's haunted, and there's things that you can experience while you're there, to me, that are very residual in nature. They actually still have the board that has her blood on it for when she fell on the floor and bled out on the floor. They have it. It's behind. Look how excited I get. Like, they have it on display. You can't touch it, but it's behind glass. And I was like, oh, I was trying to get a picture of it, but I couldn't. And you can go in the basement. Gettysburg just loves their paranormal history. They love their history, but they also embrace that paranormal history. So everybody in Gettysburg, they either believe in the paranormal and they talk about it like I do, like, just like, guess what? And they geek out, or they believe in the paranormal, but they don't want to talk about it. Either way,
Yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
has seen something.
Yeah, and that's the way Savannah, Georgia is. You talk to people in Savannah, they're all like, "Yep, I've seen." They treat it like we see a cow in Wisconsin. It's like, "Ah, I've seen a ghost. My uncle did, my cousin, and my brother," and and because I was there, like I said, for business, and I was taking a bunch of tours and talking to people. And it was hilarious. It was just like, I would joke with people. I so, like, down there, they have what they call a Sonic restaurant. It's kinda like our Culver's here. They're all over the place. And I said, "I bet you that Sonic across the street is haunted." And without missing a beat, the hotel manager was like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It was built, I think, on something like a burial ground." And I'm, like, looking at her, I'm like, "Is she serious?" And right, that it's just normal. It's just
In
like, yeah,
Gettysburg, there's several mass graves that are still there and they're not marked. I'm reluctant to say where they are because I know people that live there and they're like, yeah, that little lot over there has about 100 Confederate soldiers buried 10 feet underground. And it's like next to a KFC or something. Like, it's just like, what? But that's Gettysburg. And you're like, well, no wonder this place is haunted. You've got death. You've got unceremoniously buried people. Like, it's just, that's the way it is there. And they do a really good job of, keeping it historically accurate and authentic and kind of capitalizing on the spooky stuff this time of year. But I always like to go like in April when it's not spooky season. I got to tell you this, John, when I was there in August, I went and I did a little evening hike with a buddy of mine up to Little Round Top right at sunset. And then we left at sunset. So again, sunset, the energies are up. We were the
right?
only people there. The parks department, they are there watching. They want to kick you out. They're like, you got 2 minutes. They're like, okay, we're leaving. So we're walking and we get back to the car. We're just driving out of the park and it's sunset. And the park is, it's far away from a highway or anything like that, this area of the park. And we're going around a bend and it's like a little foggy and the lights are coming off. And I kid you not, I see a pair of legs walking up the hill towards the car. And I just got the hair on my neck stood up, and I am shitting you not. Like, this was a Civil War soldier. I saw this. This was a flesh and blood Confederate soldier complete with like a beard that was right out of the 1800s, glasses, like he was disheveled. He was holding a rifle, and he's just walking up the fucking street. Pardon my French.
No,
And
go
my
ahead.
friend and I'm like, please tell me you see that. And he's like, well, that happens all the time around here. But I'm thinking, why is there a Confederate soldier at dusk walking into the park in the area where tens and thousands of them were slaughtered? He didn't look at us because we're looking in the car. We're like, make eye contact. Nope. He stayed in character and he walked. And I am kicking myself, John, for not looking in the rearview mirror because what if he wasn't there?
All right.
He just kept on going into the dark. I'm like, okay, that was weird. And it very well could have been a person that's just in their, reenacting mode, but it made no sense for the middle of July to be walking into the park at night dressed like a soldier when the DNR is up there and you can't carry a rifle around Gettysburg. Come on. So, yeah, that scared the shit out of me. I mean, I loved it. I was so excited that I forgot to look in the rearview mirror to see if he actually was really there.
I love
Crazy,
it.
right?
I love it.
You got to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, maybe this has to do with what you were talking about too. The reenactors, do you think that does any, because we talked about it's humid out, it's full moon, it's, maybe that has contributes to the spirits coming forward a little stronger that time because of the elements. Do you think the reenactors do anything to affect that? Like, when they're doing the battles, do you think any of the spirits are like, "Oh my god, I gotta join them. There's a battle going on."
Back to work.
Yeah, back to work. What do you think about that?
I'd be curious to find that out. The only time reenactors are in Gettysburg are during the time that the battle happened, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Like, you're not allowed to just do a reenactment when you feel like it. Like, there's permits and stuff. You have to pay and you can get like certain things. Like, I've seen people like camping in certain areas of the park, but it's very protected. It's very regulated. They're not shooting cannons or anything like that. But I would wonder I'd be curious to find out if during that time that the 3-day reenactment is occurring, if there's a spike in paranormal activity too. I would be curious to see that because to me, that would be indicative of you can help a manifestation of a residual haunting. Like maybe you can impact it in some way. Maybe by I've heard ghost stories where they play period music. They play like a music box or something and an apparition could appear. There's something with music in the paranormal too, which is a rabbit hole I'd love to explore another time. And triggering that response in the environment. So I'd be curious to find that out. I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's really interesting to me too. What I would love to experiment on, and one of my guests did this. He was at a Revolutionary fort, Fort Henry. So that was a very important fort in the Revolutionary War and everything. And behind the fort, there's a forest where there were some major battles. And what he did was he brought some realistic musket sounds and he played them on a Bluetooth speaker. And he said he could hear like not only people talking, disembodied voices talking, but also he could hear like musket return fire. So he would play the fire like whatever, his musket fire, and then hear that back. And
was he hearing it in the recording, or was he hearing it in the environment?
So when he would not hear it when he was out with his group that he was showing around doing the tour. People would hear like little voices and stuff like that, and not kind of there were some sightings. But when he started doing that, nobody really heard anything. And then when he got back and played it, to review it when he was doing editing, clear as day, could hear musket return fire and voices.
That's an EVP. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what I was thinking with the reenactors, and also, maybe getting permission sometime to go in there and, whether you just, because realistically, you could get a nice Bluetooth speaker, put it on a table, go out there, do some cannon fire, do some musket sounds, and probably get something in return. But I'd be fascinated to hear that if people have done that and what has happened. So that's interesting to me.
That's good. I'm gonna look into that. I think that would be a cool an
Right.
easy way to investigate something just to try to get those
Yeah, yeah.
EVPs. I've never gotten an EVP, and I really want to, that I know of.
So what point, KJ, in your lecture, of stone tape theory that has surprised you? Is there anything through your research that you went, "Wow, that's really interesting"?
Truthfully, the thing about a weird science I learned about that kind of was the impetus behind stone tape theory. It kind of connected on the screens being weird. Okay, we're there. Okay, good. Drum roll. Was when I learned about something called the DNA phantom effect. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's oh my gosh. I know we're running up to our hour, but the DNA phantom effect was something that was uncovered in the, I want to say like the late 80s by a Russian physicist named Dr. Peter Gierov. And he was doing experiments with DNA molecules in a lab and blowing them up with like liquid nitrogen and microwaves. And he was seeing what happened with when he just destroyed DNA. And you can see DNA, it's like a very fine hair. Like you can see a DNA molecule and they can expand up to 6 feet. They're just this weird little coiled, vibrating, energetic thing that we don't really understand. And what he found out when blowing these things up or putting them in a quartz container and freezing them with liquid nitrogen is that the DNA, the physical part of the DNA, was destroyed, but an energetic duplicate of the coiled DNA remained. An energetic duplicate. And he said that it was like it spiraled along like a disembodied spirit in the lab, and then it just vanished. Like, hold on, time out. What? Like, I had to reread that several times. So to me, that says we're made out of light. We're made out of an energetic duplicate at our core that sticks around for a little bit and then it vanishes. DNA phantom effect. Look it up. It's insane. And this is from like 40 years ago. So what are they researching now? Like, why are we studying this? And so to
Right.
me, that kind of solidified my belief in that science or that hauntings can be residual. I mean, if our very DNA dissipates after some time, but it sticks around in the environment as an energetic duplicate, what are the implications of that? Not just when we're alive, but when we're deceased, So that blew my mind.
You know what else has blown my mind? I don't know if you've heard about this. There was experiments done in the 1800s, early 1900s about how much a person's soul weighs. And so they basically, this gentleman, it was a very pseudoscience, if you whatever. He figured out it was roughly 21 grams because he would have, I don't know how they did this, but a fresh corpse, like someone who nearly died, and then they would weigh them and then basically wait a little bit and then weigh them again. And he kept getting the same number, 21 grams, 21 grams. So they kind of summarized, oh, that's the human soul leaving the body. Again, it's pseudoscience, it's weird science, that it weighs 21 grams. Have you heard of theories about that? And what do you think about?
Yeah, I had read about that too. I was trying to think of the name of the book that I read. I was reading a book on near-death experiences. I think it was by Dr. Raymond Moody. It's on
Sure.
my
Yeah, that
shelf. I
sounds
can picture
familiar.
it.
Yes.
It was where he chronicles thousands and thousands of stories of people who have these NDEs, and they all have a lot of similarities. And to me, that's just so compelling, is that the data supports that a lot of people have had this happen. Like, why can't we take this seriously? But I have heard about the soul having a weight to it, it's interesting to me. And I don't know what to make of that. But
Yeah.
if it's something that can be scientifically, it's valid, it's reliable, like it's not just one person weighed that much, it's been consistently shown that we need to look at this with a different perspective and not be afraid of it and be intrigued by it and say, why? Why does that happen? What does that mean? And not just say, oh, that happens. And then what?
Right.
Tell me more.
Yeah. And that just, it just blows me away. Like stone tape theory. And then, you talking about just science and souls and everything. It's just, there's so much involved with the paranormal that is so interesting and fascinating. It's just not about scary ghosts and spooky whatever. It's science and some interesting science associated with that. So that's amazing. I
Weird
love it.
science. That's what John
I
Mack
love it.
said, the late Dr. John Mack, he said there's a lot of weird science that turns out to be not so weird once it's proven. And that's what I
Yes.
think stone tape theory is. I think it's a science. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Yes, and hopefully someday we can put some more effort to try to figure it out, and get some. Well, we'll never get closure on it, but at least we'll get some idea of whether it's true or not, and how we can use this science in the future to not only help people, but also to again learn more about ourselves and kind of what is out there, and it's just blows me away. Just completely fascinating. So, KJ, thank you so much. Again, I can always talk to you for hours. Was awesome as always. If you could tell my spooky friends again where they can find you, if you're in the Madison area or near areas, to sign up for a ghost walk, a Madison City Ghost Walks. Where can they do that?
Yeah, I'm in Madison. You can find us at madcityghostwalks.com. Pretty easy to remember. We're the mad spooky city. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I'm KJEE83, Chi83 on Instagram. So I post just life stuff, spooky stuff, all sorts of stuff, art stuff, ghost walk stuff. So follow along for some spooky fun, and hope to see you on a ghost tour or cemetery tour this season.
Yes, absolutely. I would look forward to that. You just let me know, and hopefully we can work that all out. And yes, one thing I always say is please support KJ and Matt City Ghost Walks, because I know there's bigger tours and everything like that and blah, blah, blah. But it's important to understand a person like KJ is putting her time and effort and love and passion behind this. That's very rare these days. So please take the opportunity to enjoy that and really soak that in, because you're going to come, like we said earlier, you're going to come with questions, you're going to come with experiences, you're going to come with someone who is, again, I can't say it strong enough, it's worth your time. It's worth that couple hours out of your day to say like, wow, I learned something new, or, I had a really weird experience, or KJ's just was a blast, and I just really enjoyed the tour. And that's great too. Whatever you get out of it is so important, especially in the spooky season. You can enjoy something different and try something new. That's the other thing I tell people. Try something new. Even if you're a skeptic, like KJ said, go along, grill her. If you think she's,
I can handle
full
it.
of it, you can like grill her and be like, you're just making this up. You're just making spooky sounds. You're just whatever. I'm sure KJ would have answers to
Don't
that and
tell him
some
my
fun
secret. No,
answers.
I
So,
welcome everybody. It's an accessible
yeah,
tour to everybody. So please come.
yes,
You're going to have a good time, whether you like it or not.
yeah, exactly. The best thing you're going to go away is go, hey, KJ's a really cool person. I really enjoyed this. So again, please do that. And then all the links will be in this episode. And, I do my best, like I said, to get it out there. And like I said, it's such a nice time. You go have a great time. You have a great experience. Please do that. And like reach out to KJ on her socials. If you have some questions or you just want to talk to her about life or whatever, I'm sure KJ would love to hear that too.
I would love that. Thank you for having me, John. It's always a pleasure.
Always the best. Always a pleasure. It's so amazing, like I said, to talk to you. And of course, stay spooky.